All right, well, thank you all for coming. This is just a session about where I came from and my influences, really. So this is where I live. I live in West Auckland, up in the bush. It's fantastic. That's my house, Pussycat in Pussycat Heaven now. It's just me. I collect stuff, so I've got a really big collection of Chairman Mao stuff, and I've been to China quite a lot of times. My interests aren't political. When I first went there, somebody gave me a porcelain bust from the 60s, and then I got two, and then someone gave me three, and then before you know it, you've got a collection. So they're really interesting in terms of the moulding, because some of the moulds are old, and so all the features are soft, and then others are brand new. Welcome to my studio. It's a typical studio. It's where I work. There's a lot of stuff that's about works in progress, things that have happened, things that are about to happen, things that didn't work, all these kinds of things. It's sort of like my visual sketchbook, I suppose. So this is a walk through my studio. I do a lot of tests. So here are sort of tests. Here are more tests, bisque-fired pieces waiting to be glazed. These are my kilns. This one's just cooling down from a bisque firing. This is my bigger kiln, empty. This is my spray booth. You have a lot of stuff around that's just useful, that you don't necessarily need, but every once in a while you do. Everything's in buckets. More tests. And this is my throwing room. So that's my wheel, and the most essential part of a studio, the TV. These pieces were made yesterday, and they're sort of drying, getting ready to a stage where I can turn them. These ones are wrapped in plastic. I find I need to let them equalize over a certain time, so that I can do the sharp turning. This is my pug mill. My pug mill. And the clay as it comes out, and just, kind of stuff. So I've got quite a small throwing room, but everything's within hand distance or working distance. Okay, so that's that, but it wasn't always like that. So when I started, when I was 1966, that was the woodshed, and the first kilns, and my influences. Lucy Ree, who is a Viennese potter who lived in London, she was very, very good to me. If you know her work, it's all once fired, raw glazed, once fired. At the beginning when I started, everything was high fired, cone 10, reduced, brown and green, truth to materials. and I found a book with her work in it. This was the agate that we were talking about today. And suddenly it was a revelation to me, because these were these kind of European things, influenced by the Bauhaus, de Still, industrial ceramics. Hans Koper, when I went to Royal College of Art, Hans Koper was my tutor 1 day a week. So a lot of my work references his. Once again, raw glazed, once fired. Extraordinary. I regard him as the greatest potter of the 20th century. And then closer to home, there was a factory in West Auckland, Crown Lynn, and there was Ernest Shuttlebottom, and he had worked at Wedgwood in Britain, and Crown Lynn bought him out, and he did these hand-thrown things. And at the time, when I first found one, that was blue. It was coloured in blue paint, and I had to scrape the blue paint off it. And then I found hand-potted Crown Lynn on the bottom of it, and it intrigued me because I could feel the throwing ridges. And so suddenly, here was a style that I really liked. There was a time when you were called a Crown Lynn potter if you tried to be too clean. But these were the pieces that he made. Fantastic pieces. And then Keith Murray, who was a New Zealand architect who worked for Wedgwood, and Ernie was a disciple of his, and he designed for Wedgwood in the mid-30s. And his work, I mean, they look so new and so modern and so ahead of their time. And then more recently, I discovered this guy who I'd never heard of, and he had he was a Danish potter, and there was a big Danish exhibition in London in 1930, and Keith Murray saw it, and his work was described as referencing electrical insulators, and because I have a huge collection of electrical insulators, it resounded with me. But I mean, these were made in 1930, and they're so modern and so contemporary and so timeless. So these are the ones that look like electrical insulators that really turned me on. Yeah, and they almost look a bit like Memphis too. So we were talking today about transparent glazes that almost look like washing a brush in water, and how the transparent glaze works, and how I don't draw and I don't paint, so all of my decorating is actually done on the wheel. So on the wheel, as I'm finishing things, I'm setting things up to glaze. So I would make very sharp lines, and then the glaze slightly runs off the sharp line, and then it accumulates near the bottom. So you're getting, this is just a single glaze and a single clay, but you're getting that variation that's been set up in the making process. Oops. So these were the things that I was making before I went to London. They were all fired in a diesel, smelly reduction kiln, apart from the red, which were in a little electric kiln. But this was my approach to the truth and materials, grind it with your own teeth kind of aspect. And so these were the first volcanic ones. And so electrical insulators, which are pretty amazing. And I found this photo in a book, and it just turned me on. I mean, it's a man making this huge insulator.
To run what? Like, what would they run off at? It's something huge.
Something, yeah. So anyway, so then my work evolved, and all of those influences now make me what I am. And you can obviously see threads and themes going through. These were the pieces that I had in my MA degree show at the Royal College of Art. So that was as good as I could be when I left England. So these are, well, combinations of yeah, obviously what they are. And I like displaying things, and I've set up a lot of exhibitions in my time, and I like to, if you spend all that time making something, then you actually need to present it. And I have this theory that what you're saying is you're offering something with the outstretched hand to the viewer. And please have a look at this. Anyway, and I love the idea of things overlapping and things being hidden behind things, and how the shapes work. If there are any questions, ask. You know, volcanic, the easiest way to describe it is that it's like you can make toffee and then you put bicarbonate of soda in and it makes honeycomb. Well, you have a clear glaze and you put an ingredient, silicon carbide, in the glaze, and when it gets to the top temperature, it sets off oxygen bubbles as it disintegrates, and then they're sort of frozen in time as the foam.
Can I ask you, when you're making, do you have an idea of how you're going to glaze it?
Yes.
Always before you sit down and make? Yes, I do. More so when I'm finishing, when I'm turning, because I'm then I'm sharpening everything up. But it affects the clay that I use. Whether I put a slip on, like the volcanic, you've got to put lots of layers of slip on top of the piece. No, I do. I don't have I was saying that my studio is my visual sketchbook. I don't have a visual sketchbook. I don't keep a visual diary. I don't ever draw things. You know, I think with my hands on the wheel. So I work in the theatre as a designer, and so in the theatre you've got theatre lights that have a little metal stencil which is called a gobo, and it casts shadows. So sometimes it might be palm trees, Venetian blinds, or whatever. So I call these gobo bowls because they make lovely shadows on the table. Just a whimsy. I love mechanical fittings. I love industrial stuff, and these were marine fittings. Also, a lot of my things, I'm very fond of a designer, Geiger, who designed the Alien movies, and I quite like something like this, which you don't necessarily know what the function is. As I say, I've been to China a few times, and the whole idea of red is very much associated with China, and also like turned wooden bases for bottles, but I thought I would throw them. Also, there was this hobby ceramics movement that was very prominent in the 60s, and Rosemary McClay and Cecilia Parkinson and we thought, better the devil you know. So we enrolled on a hobby ceramics class, and so you bought these little punnets of glaze and you painted them on, and so this was my lot. But the one second in from the side became known as Vomit. even its title was something like Persian Fantasy or something like that. But they're really interesting because you can I high-fired these without any glaze on the outside, and then I applied them at a much lower temperature than the temperature that was required to vitrify the clay. That's my bottom line for clay, is that it's got to hold water without glaze. So it has to be vitreous.
So do you apply it very, very thick to get it to stick?
No. But because it's mixed with a glue, you put on a number of thin coats, and you paint in different directions each one.
Like what, CNC or something? Your glue?
Yes. Susset, Rados, one of those things. But I just use wallpaper paste now, which is exactly the same cellulose. Yeah. Then I got really keen on trying to make things that didn't go together, that the colours didn't go together, the shapes didn't go together. So I've always had this ongoing fascination with ugly. Yes. These are the silicon carbide. But because silicon carbide is a reduction agent, the ones that are red are just the turquoise ones with all the turquoise ground off. So you've got local reduction of the copper, which is giving you the copper red. There's another example of me setting up a shape that will glaze. So because the peaks are quite sharp and the glaze has got copper in it, as the glaze flows away from the peak, you get very little copper, and as it collects in the troughs, you get a lot of copper. So you're getting the black from copper, and you're getting the white from just being able to see the clay through the glaze. If that makes sense. I created a hoax factory called the Vortex Ware Factory that operated and made work at the same time as Crownland, and their style was that it was wheel thrown coil pottery. And so after China, the moment you go to China, everywhere there are discs. Some of the early money were discs, a lot of jade rings. So I got really keen on rings on the wall. I like the idea of the archaeological idea of using animal bones as divination, where you put them in a fire and the different cracks are red like the tea leaves. So this was my version of a kind of a divination ring. And then I got keen on what wasn't there. Like a lot of museums may have a little part of something, and then they complete it with, brown plaster or something. And so I like the idea of just being able to complete something with a simple red line. And how much you can leave out and still know what the thing was. I did a residency in Canberra, and we did black firing, which was very toxic. But so the piece is only 5 to 1,000, so the clay is still quite porous, and it's absorbed all this carbon. But because the carbon comes from used sump oil, there are all these trace elements, so there's a little bit of iridescence that you get from it. So these were the things that were made in the Vortex Ware Factory. And then I got really keen on sort of like the narrative element of things, and I tried to suggest that things were further away in the distance just by changing the colour of grey. And then, this is my theatre now. I don't see any difference between my theatre design and my ceramics, because I'm working on 3D objects in space. I'm working on a theme. I've got a duration. I've got an install. I've got an audience. The only difference really is that one is totally solitary and the other is totally collaborative. And the collaborative, you're working with a lot of young people. They make you buy new laptops and learn new programs and things, and it's terribly exciting. And I like the intellectual stimulation of theatre. This is a version of Julius Caesar that we did, which was we set it in the Kennedy era. And the guys who killed him, they were like businessmen in suits. They came in, took off their jackets and took out a knife, and suddenly you knew they were like feral dogs going in for the kill. It was amazing. It was cabaret. This was the very first thing I did. I'll just go quick through these. Then with a lighting designer friend, I had a retrospective in Wellington 2002, and they let me design the exhibition. So I had an endless shelf that went down one wall, and down the centre of the room there was a long shelf, and there was a lighting design that changed imperceptibly. And so there were times when the white things were coloured, and other times sometimes they were blue, sometimes they were green. Then we experimented quite a lot with changing the colour of things just with light. So this is the same thing, but just under different lighting conditions. So that is an example of a gobo coming onto a bowl. And these were I thought I needed to know about paper clay. So I went to a school in doing paper clay, but I didn't want to make sheets of paper clay. So I piped the paper clay out of tomato sauce bottles, and so they're quite big. They're about this big, and you could only do one layer a day. So it's sort of like a time-lapse photograph of how the thing was constructed. And once again, you get fantastic shadows. Light plays such an important part. Another friend and I were very keen on German opera, especially Wagner, and German opera design frequently uses, they're called 10K lights. So they're huge lights, and they just have them in one direction. So we played the overture to Tannhauser endlessly, and had these lighting effects. And also I had shelves that came out of the wall where things were just on the edge about to fall off. So that's an example of no light and light. How shadows and light really work. I was in more theatre. So this is, most of my work is very stylized. So I go for like a feeling or an ambience rather than a location. So this is from Il Trovatore, when the daughter is about to be sent to a convent, and so we thought, well, how can we do a convent? And so candles, and my costume designing friend designed all the costumes using clear plastic, so the light shone through the costumes, so they had a kind of a very ethereal. That was great. Anyway, I thought it was great. So there's another lighting designer. He bought these amazing light slabs, and he could change the colours by computer. Then, when you're in China, there's the ubiquitous fishbowl, and I got really keen on creating little one-act plays within the bowls, and so. And these bowls, this one was called Feeding Frenzy, and it was like all the nice, beautiful goldfish attacking one, and so they ate out its eyes first of all, and then they started eating it, and gradually there was almost nothing left. And then someone said to me, "Oh, your work's in a remainder bin at Farmers." So I rushed to Farmers and I bought them all, and they had no labels or anything on them. So I had these decals made to prove that I hadn't made them. So I had a decal put on the bottom that I wasn't the maker. This is, will that go? Oh yeah, this is just it's really hard to document your work once it's been and gone. But once again, you can see how the ridges on things, like the glaze clears on the edge, clears on the edge. I like the idea of like portals. Maybe something's going to come out of the hole. These ones, the clay was exactly the same colour as the glaze, so I could fire them upside down so that I could work horizontally, but when they collapse flat on the shelf. Anyway, enough of that. Then I designed a play about Rothko, and I got very keen on him. And in the play, there was he was talking to his young apprentice, and he asked him, what colour is that? And the apprentice said, oh, it's red. And then there's a diatribe of 2 pages of Rothko saying, is it crimson, is it scarlet, is it vermilion? It's all these versions of red. And so I got really interested, you get the kind of visual zinginess with Rothko, but I was interested in getting like a chemical zinginess. And so there are seven different glazes, and they vary from alkali to matte to shiny, copper, chrome, iron, cobalt. And just seeing because I'm spraying, you can spray here, and then you can spray here, and you've got drift from this color, and you've got drift from this color, so you get a mingling in the interface. And so just playing around with combinations, and some worked more than others. Oh, and this is like my latest work. I've done a lot of work in white. I'm interested in just subtle changes. Like the 2 in the middle are exactly the same idea, but they're not, if that makes sense. I'm playing around with like repeating forms, conical forms. I find straight lines are really the hardest to make in ceramics, as we will all find out. So then now I've just got quite keen on this crackle finish, which is also, it's a glaze fault, but it's playing around with the idea that you're making the clay and the glaze incompatible. And so it's like someone wearing a cardigan that's too small, it's going to split at the seams. It's that kind of feeling. And when you can really get it to work, it's unbelievable. It doesn't always work. There's more of those. More of those. And the cylinders featured in my work all the time. I don't know what the fascination is. I suppose it's one of the most basic forms that you learn to throw. And that. So these are the show that just opened in Dunedin on Friday, and I called it Negative Spaces. So I thought it'd be really sexy to name the exhibition something that wasn't there. And so it's just about things that overlap, things that almost don't work, still playing around with the idea of ugly, except I made the mistake of saying that at the opening, and I wasn't really meaning, ugly. I was meaning like juxtapositions that made you feel uncomfortable, visually uncomfortable, I suppose, rather than ugly. And the gap between the grey and the shiny black, and then the matte black overlaying I find that those kind of relationships really interesting. I think it's just about there. And then I made a piece that's 270 cones in 9 different shades. And it's huge, it's huge. And so that's how it's made up, of all these cones. but it was my attempt at being funny about the printing process, but also about 3D printing. It's only a joke to me, I think. And then when I had a major show to celebrate my 50 years as a potter, and another light and design friend there's 200 cones on the wall, and they're quite big, so some of them poke out quite a long way. And this went on over 25 minutes, and so it was almost like a James Turrell installation that you couldn't really tell the colours changing, but this has been sped up to 2 minutes. But it was interesting how the shape of the cones changed just depending on the colour that was being projected and the angle. You know, it's picking up on the big German lighting thing as well. So that's it. That's me. Any questions?
Do you use the same clay body for most of your works, or do you use multiple different clays?
No, I only use one clay. Just that we're having trouble with one mix, and so I've slid on to another one just to get me through. But yes, one clay. Even for the black things, I'd still use the white clay. Yeah.
So can we ask what that clay is? Or?
The Deco Pot Midfire White. And the new batch is just stunning. Really good to work with and very white. So yeah, so that just goes on for 2 minutes. Talk amongst yourselves.
Thank you, Tom.
Oh, that's all right.
How long's your exhibition on for in Dunedin?
Till the 4th of October.
So it's whereabouts is it in Dunedin?
Milford Galleries.
It is Milford Gallery.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I said to a friend and she said, you sure it's Dunedin? No, it's positive.
What production company do you work with in Auckland?
Mostly Auckland Theatre Company.
Yeah.
And worked for the Opera Company. I do a lot of little things for friends.
Yeah. Do you work with the West Auckland area?
No. I've been to things because I live near the Glen Eden Playhouse, so I've been things there. But no. I've got something on at the Pump House at the moment on the North Shore.
Nice.
Mm.
Okay. Very nice.
All right.
Excellent. Yeah.
Another wheel.
Well, I hope it makes sense.
Just envious.
It's
Envious, she said. Just envious.
Well, I mean, your influences have to come from somewhere. You know, no one's completely original, but I enjoy it all. You know, I really get off on it all, and you know, you get up in the morning and you say yes to the day. What could be better?
And doing something that you absolutely love, which is just the bonus, isn't it?
Yeah, well, mainly, everyone's had the odd bad experience in the theatre, but mainly, you know, you're working with the same people, you know, you talk the same language, there's trust. You know, if you suggest something outrageous, people know that you've done the research. And it's great. And a happy actor is a happy actor. Just as an unhappy actor is an unhappy actor too. Yeah, I mean, no, it's terrible to say, but you can do, like, if you're doing an opera and you're going to use like really expensive material, you make a toile out of cheap calico, and so you can make it, you can get it up to the final fitting, and it's perfect. Then you unpick the toile, you cut the expensive fabric, and you put it on, and the person's in a bad mood, and they can change their body, and it doesn't fit, you know. What do you do? All right then.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
What?